Welcome back. This last episode goes hard on immortality, AI jobs, and why boredom is basically a survival skill. We also spiral into global order, information diets, and how excited has quietly replaced happy. The immortality part is terrifying, but in a very rational way, right? Because it's not becoming a god, it's you still die to buses. Imagine living with the knowledge that forever can end in 1 second. That's not peace, that's anxiety with better marketing. And people act like more time automatically fixes the inside of you. The argument was like, if you don't know what you do with extra life, why are you chasing it? Yeah, because more time with family is still a weird justification. Like, you're busy building the machine, not actually being with the family today. It's delay as a lifestyle, but with a lab coat. And then the inequality angle, bioengineering first for the rich. Oh, that's the real villain. That turns economic gaps into biological gaps, and suddenly society can't even pretend it's fair. Congrats, your kids are smarter, but also, sorry your kids are not in the plan. The scariest bit was the possibility they're not upgrades, they're silent downgrades. Like you increase intelligence and accidentally delete compassion, spiritual depth, whatever. People underestimate trade-offs because they only measure the win metric. It reminded me of how companies ship features first and safety shows up later as an afterthought. Except now it's your brain, not a dashboard. And the arms race logic is brutal. If one side goes first, everyone feels forced. It's always, we have to respond. Nobody ever says, maybe we should slow down. That's why the contrast with AI was interesting. AI arms race feels inevitable. Bioengineering arms race feels suicidal. With AI, you can at least imagine regulation and alignment debates. But with genetic and brain tweaks, you can't exactly patch a soul like a bug. There was that Elon robot tangent, like motor skills and social skills aren't solved yet. Robots will bandage the crying child is the funniest impossible task. But the point landed. Cognitive work is easier to automate than messy human interaction. Still, I can't fully relax. Technology always surprises you on the hard parts. True, but the conversation was basically, yes, jobs shift, but retraining is the bottleneck. And retraining isn't just money, it's psychological support, repeated reinvention. Cool, so your career becomes a lifelong subscription to change. And it's not a one-time event, it keeps updating by the decade. Which makes just teach everyone to code feel laughably fragile as a strategy. Because maybe in 30 years nobody codes, AI does the coding like breathing. So what skill do you invest 10, 12 years in for a child? Exactly. And it's the first time history where the future job market is basically unknowable. The only constant they offered was volatility, so you train adaptability, not specific tasks. That then connects to conflict, because volatile systems don't just break markets, they break alliances too. The global order argument was spicy. We had a relatively peaceful era, and it's being dismantled without a replacement. We hate the system is easy. Here's the alternative is where people vanish. The phrase was basically, if you destroy order and offer no new norms, you get disorder. And then the vicious circle. Defense budgets skyrocketing, education and healthcare losing oxygen. I mean, once weapons spending dominates, it's hard to pivot back later. That part made me think about how incentives shape what governments feel forced to do. It's like an economic model, but with tanks. Then we got the surprisingly personal angle, information diet and meditation as practical sanity tech. I love the analogy. News is food for the mind, but the wrong diet makes you sick. And the perspective loss from constant news cycle? Yeah, that's real. I can feel my brain turning into a panic machine when I doom scroll too long. They also tied it to sleep and said AI won't sleep, which is a nightmare conceptually. Our biggest competitor is sleep should be printed on every product roadmap. Because humans aren't computers, our bodies collapse when you remove recovery. That whole section felt like an indictment of engagement metrics. 1 hour of outrage beats 10 minutes of joy, so the system learns outrage. And outrage is basically more monetizable excitement, not happiness. The definition switch was wild. Excitement equals fight or flight, not joy. So politics has been weaponizing adrenaline for years. And then boredom becomes the missing muscle. People can't tolerate stillness anymore. Did you catch the experiment idea? People would rather get shocked than do nothing? That's honestly scary, because it means attention is already out of our control. It's like the smartphone is always ready to pull you out of yourself. And the conclusion was hopeful. Algorithms aren't fully in control yet. Humans still have agency. Which becomes the pick one thing advice. Don't do everything. Do what's close to your heart. Cooperate in groups, not lone crusaders, because collective action scales. 50 coordinated people beat 500 isolated people, even if everyone feels equally passionate. And then the final question about imposing one global law. Consume less information. Reflect more. Honestly, that sounds almost too simple to be true. But simple is often the hardest change, right? All right, that's it for episode 2. What a wild ride through mortality, jobs, order, and sleep. Thanks for sticking with us across this series, and we'll catch you in the next one. Go get some boredom and guard your information intake. Welcome back. Episode 2 ends it with mortality, AI jobs, global order, and boredom as medicine. We basically went from could we live forever to please log off and sleep. The immortality part made me laugh first, then feel weirdly anxious. Like, yes, more time sounds amazing, until you realize accidents still end you instantly. That's the I'm immortal until I'm not horror movie premise. And the deeper point was the psychological trade-off. Scarcity makes choices meaningful. Wait, so your soulmate story changes when you can just queue up infinite versions? I get the intuition, but does time really create meaning, or do we just romanticize time? Even if it's romanticization, the brain still responds to constraints, so constraints matter. This is why the what will you do with the extra life question hits like a truck. Like, stop pitching me the upgrade. Show me you can handle today. And then it flips into inequality. Who gets the upgrades first is the whole disaster. Bioengineering plus economics becomes biological hierarchy, like a new class system. The scariest line was, we don't understand the consequences. We're meddling before we model. Also, intelligence upgrades might be a compassion downgrade, which is brutal. Imagine a world where the most optimized trait is obedience, not empathy. And then the arms race logic kicks in. If someone else goes first, you can't stay polite. That we're damned if we do, damned if we don't feeling is so real. But I liked the twist. Maybe slower, safer societies have an advantage over reckless ones. It's like seatbelts. Nobody wants them until the crash becomes personal. Okay, switching gears, jobs and AI. He's not saying all jobs vanish, right? He's saying most jobs change or disappear and new ones appear. But retraining is the bottleneck. The not a single watershed but continuous waves framing is actually the most realistic. Every 5 minutes the map updates and you're still trying to learn the old street names. And I love the nurse example. AI can read, but it struggles with delicate motor skills and social context. AI replaces nurses feels like a headline until the kid starts crying and reality shows up. That general point extends to self-driving too. Humans behave unpredictably, not like test scripts. Retraining sounds nice until you ask, who pays, who teaches, and who keeps you sane? And his take on universal basic income, make it truly global or admit it's just national theater. Because if robots undercut labor everywhere, local support won't save people far beyond the border. So either you build a global safety net or you accept a global underclass. Also education. What skill is worth investing 10 to 12 years in when the future is unknowable? The only certainty is volatility, which means the meta skill is adaptability, not specific tools. That connects to the return of wars vibe. When systems destabilize, conflict finds openings. The phrase, destroyed the existing order without offering an alternative, was such a clean indictment. Global cooperation isn't global government. It's rules and norms, so nations can coexist without constant threat math. Otherwise, you get fortress mentality, where everyone's building walls and acting surprised when nobody feels safe. And once defense budgets rise, it's a feedback loop. More weapons, more insecurity, more budgets. It's frustrating because it's all human choice, not destiny. Then we zoom into information hygiene and the mind, balanced diet, information fasts, meditation. That information is the food of the mind metaphor felt weirdly comforting. Because if you overeat chaos, you don't become smarter, you just become frantic. And the argument about sleep, AI doesn't sleep, humans do, so constant processing breaks us. Our biggest competitor is sleep. That line should be printed on every product roadmap. Social media engagement optimizes outrage, and outrage destroys the very capacity for peace. 1 hour of outrage beats 1 hour of joy in their ad math, so they keep feeding you rage. And the algorithm doesn't just show content, it trains your nervous system. The TikTok point was hilarious and terrifying. 60-year-olds hypnotized like the machine hacked curiosity. Also, people don't understand the meaning of excited. That rant was oddly brilliant. Excited isn't happy, it's fight or flight. So if you're excited all day, you're living in threat mode. Which explains why boredom feels like danger now. The experiment about people preferring an electric shock to doing nothing, that's the loss of boredom. If you can't tolerate stillness, you can't find peace of mind, and then peace in the world becomes impossible. So the cure isn't more entertainment. It's learning to metabolize life without constant stimulation. Basically, stop letting the algorithm be your personality. And that lands perfectly with the consume less information, reflect more global law idea. The best part is it's actionable. No committee required, just you and your choices tonight. Also, it ties back to immortality. If time is finite, you owe your mind quality, not noise. And if time becomes extended, the risk is wasting it. So reflection becomes even more important. I keep coming back to agency. Algorithms aren't fully in control yet. You still have one job. Pick one thing close to your heart, then cooperate. Because 50 coordinated people is basically the human superpower in a hoodie. All right, that's it for episode 2. Thank you for sticking with us across this whole series. Go guard your information intake, get your sleep, and practice a little boredom on purpose. We'll catch you next time. Go live, not just scroll. Welcome back. This is the final episode. We wrap mortality, bioengineering risks, AI work shocks, and the boredom to peace fix. And honestly, the through line is, we keep getting power before we get wisdom. Like we learned to cut forests fast, then realized the forest was kind of essential. Right. And the same mistake shows up in trying to upgrade our inner world. The scariest part is that manipulation isn't the same thing as understanding consequences. Imagine we tweak genetics or implant devices, then discover we broke compassion. Congrats, your IQ went up, your ability to care went down. And even if the intent is good, the side effects might be political weapons later. Put it in the hands of armies, governments, or corporations. What do they optimize for? Discipline, intelligence, loyalty, and they'll quietly downplay everything soft. Also, the upgrade pitch assumes it's purely additive, like new RAM. But biology is messy. The brain is not a laptop you can reset without fallout. And then there's the arms race problem. Nobody wants to wait politely. You delay for safety and someone else calls you behind and moves first. That's the we're screwed if we do, screwed if we don't trap, huh? But the argument here is that bioengineering isn't like AI finance. Speed can be self-destructive. With cars, you want brakes and seatbelts. You don't want to imitate the country with none. Exactly, slow and safe can be an advantage, not a punishment. Now, immortality itself is where it gets weirdly philosophical and brutal. Because the desire to stay alive forever doesn't automatically produce happiness. Finite time shapes meaning. Scarcity makes choices feel real. If everything is postponable forever, do goals even bite? Like, would relationships change if your partner isn't competing with someone else's years? Sorry, babe, I'm just optimizing for the next decade of you. And even before immortality arrives, people will age into disappointment. Plus, you're not necessarily God-proof. Accidents still end you. That's a specific kind of anxiety. Infinite time odds, but zero control on catastrophe. It's like you get the worst of both worlds, terror with no deadline relief. So the real question becomes, what is life for if time stops being limited? Same question as money. Why are you getting it if you don't know what to do with it? Yeah, I'll extend my consciousness for 1,000 years. Sounds like avoiding living today. And then AI enters the chat, bringing a different kind of anxiety. Jobs, identity, purpose. The view is, most existing jobs may disappear, but new ones will emerge. Which is nice until you realize retraining is the actual boss fight. Not a one-time event, but repeated reskilling as the world keeps shifting. But how do you retrain when the system retrains you back, instantly? The counterpoint is interesting. AI is great at cognitive tasks, harder at motor and social skills. So doctors who read and decide are easier to automate than the nurse comforting a crying child. The bandage is tougher than the spreadsheet. Same with self-driving. Humans are basically the chaotic environment generator. Excuse me, what's the probability a passenger is drunk? So the labor disruption isn't uniform. It hits some skills first. But even then, we're underestimating the global scale of inequality the tech creates. Like universal basic income, does it mean universal across countries or just national theater? If robots are cheaper in rich places, what happens to people elsewhere? Don't worry, that's a local program. Results may vary by passport. And education becomes impossible to plan because nobody knows what skills matter in 20 years. You can teach farming because history trends repeat. AI-era volatility breaks that predictability. The only stable bet is change accelerates and you must adapt forever. Which loops back into conflict too. When the order breaks, disorder fills the vacuum. So war budgets rise. Money shifts from nurses and schools to tanks and cyber weapons. A world that funds anxiety trains more anxiety. And it's not inevitable. It's a choice humans make repeatedly. Okay, but my favorite part is the mind ecology. Information is food and you can overeat it. If you live in the news cycle, you lose perspective, like starving and scrolling at the same time. That's why balanced information diets and reflection matter, sometimes twice a day, not never. I love the line, you can't find peace if you can't handle boredom. Boredom is basically the gateway drug to peace of mind. And the experiment where people pick an electric shock over doing nothing, yeah, that's bleak. It proves we're trained to fear stillness, not just to love entertainment. Then the algorithm explanation lands. Engagement rewards outrage because outrage sells attention. So corporations measure success in more time awake, not in more life well lived. And that's why sleep becomes the villain in this whole system. If you push non-stop processing, humans collapse, like the body has built-in hard limits. Sleep is the competition's slow mode, and we're losing that battle. Also, the idea of excited being flight or fight, not happiness. People misunderstand that constantly. I'm so excited often means my nervous system is on fire somehow. So the cure is countercultural. Reflect, ingest less, sleep, and practice boredom on purpose. Not because it's aesthetic, because it restores agency. And agency is the final anchor. Algorithms aren't fully in control yet. So pick one thing close to your heart, then cooperate. 50 people beat 500 isolated souls. Human superpower in a hoodie, I swear. And if we do anything, let it be preventing catastrophes now, not rewriting history fantasies. Study change in history so you can recognize patterns while they're still reversible. All right, wrap-up time. Guard your information intake, protect your sleep, and take boredom seriously. Thanks for riding with us through episode 1 and now the whole arc of episode 2. Go live, not just scroll. And we'll catch you in the next one, for real next one. Welcome back. Last we left, we circled agency. Algorithms aren't fully steering us yet. This episode zoomed out on immortality fantasies, AI job shocks, and why boredom is survival. I keep thinking that power to manipulate line like it's the root of everything. We learn to cut forests first, then panic about ecosystems later. Same pattern, different lab. And the scary part is inside us now. Medicines, brain-computer interfaces, genetics. Everyone acts like consequences come with a warning label. But the consequences show up like, surprise, your compassion is down 12%. Imagine a corporate dashboard for compassion dropping like an error rate. The argument was basically, even if intelligence rises, other values might get traded away. Like you'd optimize for discipline and lose empathy, spirituality, whatever you want to call it. And if governments or armies do it, the target quality set is never gentleness. It's always loyal, fast, hard to break, right? That's why the arms race logic is disgusting. Every side claims responsibility while accelerating. But then the we shouldn't rush bioengineering thing sounds slow, and the world hates slow. The point was, safety-first progress can actually win, like not copying a country with no brakes. I love that metaphor because it's so obvious, yet we still gamble with humans. Meanwhile, immortality, Why does that obsession connect to happiness so brutally? Because we treat time like a scarce asset, but we're trying to make it infinite like it's a firmware update. Scarcity shapes choices, relationships, careers, the emotional meaning of one life. If you could always try again, a bunch of decisions stop feeling sacred. You know how people romanticize second chances? Now imagine unlimited chances. And even if you don't reach immortal, there's a middle horror. No clear expiry date. Like you're alive forever. Unless a bus hits you, then you're just dead anyway. That creates anxiety because certainty of time disappears, but risk stays real. Also, the motivational question was brutal. What do you do with extra life specifically? Don't tell me more time with family unless you're already making time with family. It's like, I'll start journaling in 200 years when my life stops being busy. The logic ties back to manipulation again. People chase power but skip meaning. Okay, but then we jump to AI and jobs, which is a whole different kind of power. There was that take. Many jobs vanish, but new ones emerge, and the real pain is retraining. Not you lose work, but you lose stability because jobs evolve and disappear repeatedly. Retain one skill, forget it. Your skill becomes a legacy system every few years. And if AI keeps improving, how do you retrain fast enough to keep up? The counter was kinda nerdy but important. AI automates cognitive tasks earlier than motor and social tasks. Like reading tests and diagnosing is easier than comforting a crying child while changing a bandage. The bandage boss level, tiny motors plus empathy. And self-driving cars are the same story. The environment isn't deterministic, humans are chaos generators. Drunken passenger is the production bug that never gets patched. Then universal basic income comes in, and I was like, wait, is it actually universal? The question was, if robots produce shirts cheaper in one region, does the money flow everywhere? Because a national program while the global economy shifts is basically a moral prank. That's the global fairness problem. Retrain locally, but the job market moves globally instantly. And it messes with education too, because we can't even guess the skills needed in 30 years. In history, you knew, farmers, wheat, bread, bows. Now it's like, teach vibes. Maybe coding becomes obsolete. So what do we teach? Learning how to learn. The claim was, the only certain thing is volatility and kids need resilience for change. Which loops right into conflict. Volatility plus disorder equals more wars. And the global order idea was that the liberal order created a peaceful era by regulating relations. But if every nation abandons norms, there's no happy fortress network. Fortresses always want more. Friendly fortresses is like saying sharks will be polite if you trade them enough chum. So the fear is more defense budgets, more cyber weapons, less nurses and schools. Convert welfare budgets into tanks and call it security theater. And yes, when leadership treats global coordination as betrayal, the system destabilizes faster. That's why the agency theme mattered. If you abdicate, disorder wins by default. Now the personal twist. Information diet, meditation, and sleep. This is where it gets real. Like news cycle is food, but too much of the wrong food makes a sick mind. And the sleep is the competitor joke landed hard because sleep is literally recovery time. But our platforms monetize outrage like sleep is a wasted opportunity. 1 hour of rage beats 1 hour of joy because ads love adrenaline. That connects to the addiction design. Algorithms are basically excitement factories. And excitement isn't happiness. Excited is fight or flight, fear, anger, hate. I liked the more boredom jab, even if it sounds like a business model from 1992. If you can't tolerate waiting, you can't build peace of mind, so you keep feeding the machine. There was that experiment angle. People choose shock over doing nothing, and that's bleakly rational. Because the brain learned to escape discomfort instantly through infinite scroll. Why endure boredom? But boredom and peace are neighbors. You can't get one while dodging the other. So the boredom cure is basically training your mind to stay with itself again. Which sounds simple until your thumb becomes weaponized by recommendation engines. And then the final takeaway is almost civic psychology. Cooperate, pick one mission, prevent catastrophes. Not rewriting history, just trying to stop the next disaster before it's a headline. So if I had to compress this whole 2-episode arc, mortality grounds meaning Algorithms steal attention. Boredom restores agency. And the weird optimism is that the tools aren't fully ours yet, so we still have time to steer. All right, that's the series. Thanks for riding with us through the messy parts and the big questions. Guard your information, protect your sleep, and practice being bored on purpose. We'll catch you next time. Go live, don't just scroll, and see you on the next one. Welcome back, okay? This last episode is basically mortality versus algorithms, plus boredom as therapy. We ended up circling the same question. How do you stay human while tech gets superpowers? The immortality bit, you know what's wild? It's not the forever part, it's the anxiety. Like even if you dodge cancer, you still die to a bus or an explosion. Imagine living forever and still not controlling gravity. Talk about unresolved trauma. And the argument flips. It's not why not live forever, it's why are you so obsessed? Because if it's so life-changing, why are you not doing the life part right now? That scarcity point hit me, though. Time feels special because it's limited. If you could always try again at 60, 70, 300, would choices still matter? Relationships would get deformed, too. What does parenting even mean after 2,000 years? You'd raise someone, then they outlive half your lifetime, and you're just emotionally buffering. And the whole rejuvenate every 10 years thing sounds cool until your life becomes maintenance. I kept thinking we're already bad at handling normal time. Why would immortal time be easier? We can't even handle a notification badge calmly, bro. Okay, but then we jumped to the upgrade path. Genetics, brain-computer interfaces, the whole Frankenstein buffet. The fear wasn't just better humans, it was biological inequality turning into caste. Like rich people get the first trials. Their kids become super, and the rest get standard. And the optimism killer. What if these upgrades are secretly downgrades? Increase intelligence, lose compassion, then you've got geniuses who should not be in charge. That arms race logic is terrifying too. If one country moves first, everyone panics. It's the classic, you don't want to race, but the other guy already sprinted. That's why the move slowly and safely argument made sense to me, not because caution is cute. It's because if you break the human system, there's no rollback button. And then you compared bioengineering to AI. AI arms race almost inevitable, but humans may be self-destructive. I liked that distinction. In defense and finance, the payoff is huge. In biology, the side effects could be civilization level. Which then made the workforce part feel related, not random. Power changes everything, including jobs. Everyone asks, will jobs disappear? But the scarier part is, can people keep up? Retrain every year? In a world where the model updates hourly? Good luck with that emotional UX. The new jobs will appear claim is believable, but what do those jobs even require? The answer was basically, we can't know. Education becomes hostage to volatility. Like teaching kids to code might become useless if AI writes everything forever. Or we teach them for today's jobs, and tomorrow AI deletes the need for the skill itself. That's why the only certainty is volatility framing was so uncomfortable and honest. I also kept returning to global basic income, because it can't just be national kindness if production becomes global robots. If shirts get cheaper in robot factories, what happens to Guatemala and places like it? National basic income sounds like local band-aids on a planetary wound. That transition into wars, okay, this is where it got spicy in my brain. Not just because technology accelerates upheaval, but because the global order is actively being weakened. The point wasn't globalism good, nationalism bad, it was disorder is the alternative. Like if you smash the rules, don't act surprised when everyone improvises violence. And defense budgets rising everywhere. Classic feedback loop. Neighbor panics, you panic too. The depressing vibe is that peaceful eras weren't magic. They were decisions stacked over decades. Which brings us to the information diet, because that's basically inner peace as governance. The way they explained news cycles as food for the mind, that analogy was too clean. Overeating wrong information makes you sick, and the sickness looks like certainty. Also the meditation thing, 2 hours daily and then huge retreats, no phones, no books. That digesting what you absorbed line felt like an antidote to constant reaction. Because if you stay in the cycle, you lose perspective, and without perspective, you can't choose well. Perspective is the thing people trade away first when the timeline starts screaming. And then the sleep angle, our biggest competitor is sleep, that hit hard. Because algorithms are optimized for engagement, and engagement competes directly with rest. 1 hour of outrage beats 10 minutes of joy for the ad math, even if joy beats outrage for the soul. It's hilarious and grim. The business model pays you for emotional volatility. That's why TikTok feels like hypnosis. Constant micro rewards, zero boredom. And if you can't be bored, you can't reach peace of mind. Your brain never settles. Peace is basically boredom's roommate, and the roommate got evicted. The experiment about choosing an electric shock over doing nothing, that's not smart, that's capture. So the more boredom idea isn't aesthetic, it's defensive. Restore your agency. I love the reframing of excited. People confuse excitement with happiness, but excitement is fight or flight. Fear, hate, anger, those are all excitation states, and the feed manufactures them. So the problem with politics and content is everyone's overstimulated all the time. That's why guard your sleep is really guard your decision-making. And the final layer was hope through action. You can't fix everything. Pick one thing you understand. Then cooperate, because collective action beats lone hero energy every time. 50 coordinated humans, 500 vibes, sorry. That history is the study of change line also tied together the whole series. Like history isn't to romanticize the past, it's to notice patterns of how systems change now. You can't save people from ancient times, but you can prevent the next catastrophe. And the global law thought at the end, consume less information and reflect more, simple but brutal. Because the hardest part is admitting the feed has been training us to never digest. All right, if I had to land the plane, mortality gives meaning, algorithms steal attention, boredom returns agency. If the tools aren't fully in our hands yet, then our job is steering while we still can. That's the series wrap. Thanks for riding with us through the messy parts and big questions. Guard your information, protect your sleep, and practice being bored on purpose. Go live, don't just scroll. See you on the next one. Welcome back, yeah. This one stitched together immortality fears, AI work change, and global war risk. Then we landed on the cure trio, slower tech, calmer minds, and learning boredom again. I keep thinking about that line. Power to manipulate isn't the same as understanding consequences. Like we learned to cut forests before we learned what ecosystems would do back. And now the same vibe is about gene edits and brain-computer interfaces. The scary part is you can tweak the system without knowing what harm looks like yet. Also, people will always optimize the wrong metric first: speed, intelligence, profit. If compassion or spiritual depth drops, nobody's tracking that on a dashboard. Imagine giving that lever to governments or armies. Loyal, smart soldiers is terrifyingly intuitive. We really went from ethics board to who gets the lab first real fast. And the "will be careful" promise always sounds like vibes, not engineering. The episode's take was basically, bioengineering might punish society for rushing, unlike pure AI competition. AI arms races in finance and military feel inevitable. Human upgrades arms races might self-destruct. That no-brakes car analogy was brutal, though. Fast without checks breaks civilization. And humans love skipping brakes because it feels like freedom. Then immortality came in like the plot twist. Maybe it would be more anxiety than happiness. Even if you could live indefinitely, accidents still end you, so terror gets sharpened. That's such a weird mental geometry. Infinite timeline, but still finite body. And scarcity, time, partners, choices makes things meaningful, right? If everything is available at 30, what's the emotional price tag of choosing anything? You'd probably reschedule your life forever, and that sounds like a trap, not a victory. The episode also hit on inequality. Rich get upgrades first, and then it becomes biological inequality. Like economic advantage turning into genetic advantage, then society literally splits species level. Cool. Homo sapiens, but with a subscription tier. Switching gears to AI jobs, my favorite part was the new jobs emerge, but retraining is the bottleneck. Not will jobs disappear, but can people relearn their identity repeatedly? And the uncomfortable part, AI won't just change one wave by 2030, it keeps accelerating. That nurse example was solid. Cognitive work, auto easy, motor and social work harder, for now. The robot cracking an egg vibe is funny, but it screams precision takes time. Humans are the variable in self-driving too. Drunk passengers, pedestrians, chaos. Universal basic income got challenged with a real question. Is it global or just national? If robots move shirt production to cheaper regions, who pays, who protects, who trains? Because national safety net doesn't magically prevent displacement elsewhere. And that ties into conflict. Technology upheaval plus disorder makes wars more likely. The episode's thesis was wild but coherent. The liberal global order reduced budgets for militaries and increased peace. Once every country starts thinking like fortresses, there's no friendly geometry, only escalation. Fortresses almost never share. They negotiate for more walls. What I liked most is the not inevitable framing. Budgets and priorities are human decisions. Then it turns personal with balanced information diet. That part hit me. Constant news cycle kills perspective. Like food, too much wrong stuff makes you sick. 2 hours meditation, then retreats, no phones, no emails, basically restoring digestion. And the sleep point, our competitor is sleep, felt alarmingly true. Algorithms optimize engagement, and outrage beats joy, and joy beats sleep economically. Outrage becomes a revenue model for your nervous system. So yeah, TikTok didn't just entertain, it hijacked the boredom gap. The episode's excited is not happy distinction is key. Fight or flight isn't well-being. It's like the brain learned to crave excitement because ancient life had off periods. Now we have 24/7 stimulation and zero practice being bored, which means zero practice being at peace. So the boredom cure isn't self-improvement cosplay. It's attention hygiene. If you can't handle waiting without scrolling, you never get the silence needed for reflection. All right, if I had to land the plane, mortality gives meaning, algorithms steal attention, boredom returns agency. If tools aren't fully in our hands yet, we steer while we still can. That's the series wrap. Thanks for riding with us through the messy parts and big questions. Guard your information, protect your sleep, and practice being bored on purpose. Go live, don't just scroll, and we'll see you next time, relaxed and recharged.